and welcome back to Shadowboxing. Today my guest is Linley Lutton. So Linley, you studied as an architect.
Yes.
Where have you been your studies?
At University of Western Australia here.
And then after?
Did my postgraduate degree here at UWA as well.
And town planning. How town planning got into the picture and when?
Well, it started when I did, I'm not a formally qualified town planner as such, but I'm what I call an urban planner, and that started when I did postgraduate studies in geography, in urban social geography, and that sort of led me into this
town planning,
into the area of town planning and urban planning.
It's very interesting. So what do you need to be qualified as a town planner?
Well,
what else you need apart from being an architect and doing your postgrad?
Well, you certainly don't need to be an architect to be a town planner.
But is it helps if you are an architect?
Not necessarily, because a large amount of town planning is about regulation and policy writing.
Okay.
And so you could just spend the whole of your life as a statutory town planner,
as
if
a
you
bureaucrat.
wish. Yeah, well, yes, and someone that writes policy and regulations and things like that. But if you want to get in the area of where you start to move beyond that, and move beyond the two-dimensional plane of
yes.
planning, then it helps to have some understanding of building form.
And many of the town planners got this understanding of the architecture and...
A few do, most don't.
Most don't.
But and then on the other side, there's architects who graduate into being urban planners, and they lack some of the knowledge or the education about what planning is. So, but really, it's a combination. These days, we call it sort of urban design or urban planning.
Urban design, yes.
Yeah, and really, it's a combination of architecture and planning and landscape architecture.
I heard that you've been involved in some strange projects. How a town planner, architect, is being involved to design a satellite launching pad?
Oh yes. Now you've done your research. That was really interesting. That was probably the most audacious project that I've ever been involved in. Here we were.
It's in Christmas Island.
Christmas Island, which is a world sanctuary from wildlife point of view, and there
yes.
we were planning this this amazing Russian-supplied equipment for launching Australian client
yes.
with some Korean backing. Federal government were behind it, and I got involved in it because I was working with a big engineering company, and my architectural background enabled me to take a holistic view of the project. So,
and what was the challenge there?
Well, it was trying to bring together all the pieces of this puzzle, and the biggest problem was how to actually protect the environment when we were going to be launching rockets from this site.
And you think you succeeded with that?
Yes, at the time I think we were doing pretty well. There was one species of bird called a booby bird, which is a beautiful lazy bird. It's very fluffy, and it sits in trees, so it doesn't fly a lot, and it gets startled by noise. So what the federal government rightly did was they said, if you disturb the booby bird population, then we'll have to close you down. So what our client did was we set off a series of explosions and noises, and we tested what these birds did. Yes. And sure enough, some of them started dropping out of the trees. So we had to, what the Russians then do is you spray water onto the launching pad, and water actually absorbs the sound, dilutes the sound, and they kept working on it until they got the optimal sound level.
That's very nice to hear. The federal government want to look after booby birds. Governments not really look after the people of their own and the environment, and that's happening, I think, in Perth with the foreshore development. Can I ask you, what was your involvement with the Chinese planning of a town?
That was another very interesting project, and that was...
What's the name of the town, by the way?
It was Dragon City.
Dragon City
is the name they called it, and it was near a place called Lushan, and it was a That was done about 5 or 6 years ago, and that was a time when China was really going through a huge boom in building cities.
Yes.
And what our client, who was Chinese, needed to do was to prove to the regional government that she had the capacity to develop a town or a city of 60,000. So we went there several times and walked the site and got a feel for it and the context, and designed this city for them. And the question that's always put to me is, well, so why didn't a Chinese architect or planner, why come to a Perth or an Australian architect or planner? And
I understand they need iron ore, but why do they need a town planner?
Because we think differently. The primary thing that I observed was that they have government regulations, and the Chinese planners and architects work entirely within the regulations. So whatever the regulation says, that's what they'll do. But we have a reputation of pushing the boundaries, challenging the regulations for a better outcome, and we think holistically. We tend not to think just myopically, and that's what we did.
So what sort of holistical thinking went into the 60,000 people's town when you designed? What was your involvement? So obviously not one person done the whole thing.
No, there was a team of us doing it.
Yes.
But it was done at a very high level, so it wasn't a big team, so it was very conceptual. And the types of things that we looked at were what we do in our town planning and urban planning, which is to integrate living areas and working areas and recreational areas, so making the town user-friendly, integration of all of those sort of things. The Chinese are very good on transport. So we couldn't tell them...
That's public transport?
Public transport. Yes. We couldn't tell them much about that. But also it was about humanising the place. And there was a range of building heights that we were looking at. They ranged from 60 stories down to 5 stories, down to 2 stories. Mm-hmm. And we found out that the Chinese, by and large, preferred up to 5 stories and not much higher. So we spent a lot of time working out a city that could have this compact footprint without having to go to too many of the big towers. We had to have some of them, but by and large we kept the height of the city as low as we could for humanisation reasons.
And was any river involved there?
Yes, there was. That's why it's called Dragon River.
Dragon River,
yes. And so it was more Dragon Creek when we started, but we our plan was really to focus all of this city onto the river, and that was great fun, getting all the levels of the river right and getting all the water courses to work.
And water supply for the town? Was a challenge?
That is a challenge, and people think that China doesn't have a water supply problem, but they certainly do. Fresh water, potable water. Yeah. That would have been mains supplied from nearby dams.
So that was one of the strange projects you've been involved.
Very strange.
Okay, what are you doing when you start planning anything, not just a building? So what are the things you have to be observed before you put the pen onto and say, okay, this is my plan?
Okay. The first thing, and I teach students this, and I do this myself, and any team that I lead, I do this. Design is not even considered. You don't even have a design concept. You don't have any preconsidered concepts.
So how do you start?
So the first thing you do is just look at the physical context, and you have to take into account the climate, and you take into account the culture, the people. You look at the environmental quality of the space. You look at things that are amenities, like visual amenity, or oral amenity that people would like. And
such as what's
a river? A river is a beautiful visual amenity. Yes. Hills are a beautiful visual amenity. And you really draw up this this picture without planning anything. It's just done in words and sketches, and it's it seems like it's just a collection of contextual ideas, but you then categorise them into social issues and environmental issues and economic issues and political issues. Mm-hmm. And then once you've started to get a feel for that, then you can begin to look at the design process. And the key to being a very good planner is being two things. is being quiet. Don't be the talker. Be the listener.
Yeah.
Just be the listener. And the other very important thing is be a very good observer.
Observer
Yes.
of everything.
Of everything.
You mean eyes for details or general?
Details and general things. Look at the people. Look at what they do to live. Look at how they spend their leisure time. And you begin to all of a sudden join the dots about, like
so that's
in
all
China.
the complexity of life itself.
Right, exactly. So look at all of that. And I tell people that, in fact, I often call myself an urban ecologist because...
What does it mean?
Because a city really is like a man-made ecological system.
Or ecological disaster. Linley, thanks for the interview and good luck for your shadowboxing.
Thank you, Tibor.
Thank you for watching Shadowboxing. See you next week, same time, same channel.